Norma Mngoma, the estranged wife of former Minister Malusi Gigaba, spilled the beans last night on the lavish lifestyle allegedly funded by the controversial Gupta family. For more on that, the law and what it says in these matters, including the issues around spousal privilege. I'm joined by Advocate James Grant. He talks to us from Johannesburg. Advocate, a very good morning to you and thank you very much for your time. I want to start off exactly with that issue at the top of that intro, the issue of spousal privilege. Now, I just want to read you something quickly here, that under South African law, a spouse called as a witness can only be compelled to testify against an accused spouse when the latter is charged with a crime falling in a specific category. Explain that to us in simple language that we can all understand.
Right, if you don't mind, I'll start with the technical terms, which is that a spouse is a competent but compellable witness. In other words, they are, by competent meaning, they are a witness who can give evidence against the spouse, but on the other hand, secondly, they are not compellable in that they cannot be forced to. That leaves open, of course, the position where they wish to or where they don't object. And that's, I believe, what we saw last night.
Yeah.
If Ms. Mngoma refused to testify, she needed to raise that at the beginning of her testimony. In the absence of that, we are left having to conclude that she willingly gave this testimony and therefore it's admissible.
Well, she indicated through her lawyer that she was no longer a willing participant, and I suppose much of that was also as a result of what she said was her treatment by the commission, and that if the commission would grant her the opportunity, she would have rather not testified. But I think she met a completely different Judge Zondo yesterday, very determined that she should go ahead. Should there be any implications around that, particularly given that the affidavit as well, she contended that that affidavit, some of the aspects there were not necessarily her version of events?
Yes, it's often difficult to determine whether, in fact, a witness is refusing or not, which is why our law takes the point that when one invokes one of your privileges, you are to do so in response to every specific question. And so the confusion that appears to have arisen by virtue of the implication that she is, I think her own lawyer used the word reluctant, does not amount to an objection on her behalf, and therefore she was entitled to testify, and her testimony is admissible.
Interesting. So let's talk about her testimony then, or her evidence. How should Judge Zondo weigh up her testimony? Because she relied heavily on her memory of events and personal experiences. Was she a reliable witness, and can her testimony stand scrutiny?
When one is hearing the evidence of any witness, there are two things at stake. The first is whether they're in fact credible, which is whether they are telling the truth or not. And the second is whether they have access to the truth or not. So you have two things going on there. You could have it as it appeared, that she was telling the truth as she knew it to be, but of course it's possible that she might be mistaken. Where this sort of thing happens often is where somebody lapses into speaking of hearsay evidence. where, of course, it's second-hand. They can't really attest to the truth of it. And we saw some of that last night, where she was talking of evidence that she only came to know of by virtue of what somebody told her. And, of course, the Commission will no doubt apply the necessary caution to that.
Yeah. So, to use your words then, she had access to the truth. She may not necessarily have presented tangible evidence before the Commission to say, here it is, in black and white. The next question, therefore, goes to the spouse, the former minister. Does he also rely on his collection of events, how well he can remember them, or is he going to have to present something much more that the Commission is going to say, yes, you're quite right, your wife was not necessarily correct here?
It's an interesting philosophical question that you're raising about just how we can rely on our memories and our recollection of events. But where she testified, for instance, that Minister Gigaba would arrive home with bags of money, one would expect that this is the sort of thing that one does not make mistakes about, and that sort of testimony can be relied on as the truth. It's the truth, of course, unless she's lying, but that's a different thing entirely.
The element of self-incrimination, Advocate Grant,
yes.
Does anything stick out for you in what she said last night, and might there be something that comes back to bite Norma Mngoma?
I don't believe so. The right against self-incrimination is one which puts her in the position where anything that she did say last night that incriminates her cannot be used against her in a subsequent criminal trial. It can only be used against her indirectly. For instance, the police were to do investigations and they found independent evidence of her misdoings, then they could use that. But insofar as her own testimony, she cannot be relied on to have incriminated herself. In other words, anything she said last night cannot be used in a subsequent trial.
Let's round up our conversation then and talk about her personal protection. She did say that she has been a recipient of death threats. Whose responsibility is it to protect her? Because it does come to light that the Commission may have committed to something here.
I wish I could answer that question. I believe that the answer, although I'm not sure, would fall to the Commission, as the security of other witnesses has fallen to the Commission, and it has indeed taken action in that respect. So I believe the answer is the Commission, but I'm not a security expert.
Well, I like taking my chances there. Advocate James Grant, thank you very much for your time explaining the issues there around the testimony of Norma Mngoma at the Commission last night.